Today on Locked On Rockies, a couple of small stories that might have flown under the radar given the fact that, well, the NL West was very busy this week. The Rockies are signaling a little bit of a change when it comes to analytics, and they still believe in their third baseman.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 15th day of December in the year 2023. I'm the host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, is talk about the Colorado Rockies here on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by offering off your comments and thoughts. Let me know here on what you think in the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel comment section. And you are supporting the show when you use your subscription, and it's free. All you got to do is line it up, hit that subscribe button. You'll be supporting the show. Today on the show, Thomas Harding has done some reporting on some interesting things, and Purple Road dove into one of Thomas Harding's reports here. Joelle Milholm dives deeper into the Rockies actually having a change in philosophy, and this is a major shift for the Rockies when it comes to advanced analytics, when it comes to using the science, using the data, going deeper than the Rockies have usually gone before. And Thomas Harding also has a nice piece on Ryan McMahon and the inconsistencies of 2023 and his role on the team. So we're going to talk about all that and more here today on this episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We really do appreciate it. Shout outs to our everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Let's start with Ryan McMahon, and let's start with this piece here from Thomas Harding at MLB.com. McMahon eyes strong 24 after up and down 23. And I'm going to just read basically two paragraphs from this that completely sum up, I think, the Ryan McMahon experience, and why, when I read this piece, I believe that with the potential trades the Rockies will be facing and potentially making, I think Ryan McMahon will be the one that stays with the Rockies. I think this club really believes in this guy. I think they see a lot in him. That when they really buy in when he is when he's performing. They really believe in his leadership role and the role that he has on this team, guiding young guys. He even talks about that in this piece here. Again, this is McMahon eyes strong 24 after up and down 23 from Thomas Harding. In 89 games from April 18th, the day the Rockies abandoned the experiment of McMahon at second base and defensively challenged Jaileris Montero at third, through August 5th, McMahon slashed 274, 354, 497 with 16 home runs and 50 RBI. The power was what the club envisions when it signed him to a 5-year and $70 million extension before the 2022 season. For a player whose strike zone knowledge can lead to a high walk total, but whose swings habits also lead to a lot of strikeouts, the average was higher than projected. However, McMahon struggled late in the year. In his final 46 games, he slashed 184, 272, 301 with 4 homers and 12 RBI. Add to that the slow beginning while playing second, and McMahon's full season, 240, 322, 431 slash line with 23 homers and 70 RBI, 198 strikeouts against 68 walks, represented not quite the production for his profile with this team. That's the McMahon experience so far. And it's unfortunate. We have seen it now time and time again. We have seen stretches where Ryan McMahon is playing some of the best defensive first base while also being an impact power bat potential. Ryan McMahon is a good baseball player. Ryan McMahon is one of the best players on the Colorado Rockies. But he has the problem, just like so many other Rockies, with consistency. And this is what it comes down to when it goes back to a player like Ryan McMahon. How are the Rockies helping him get better? What it was the approach for the Rockies during the season when he was going through that tough stretch and during the stretch where he was successful. I believe that Ryan McMahon can reach his potential for this club. We've seen examples of it. But my questions with Ryan McMahon go with other Rockies and the other consistencies when it comes to, or the inconsistencies when it comes to play for the Rockies. And that, I think, has to go back to this front office and their approach. And that's why when we're going to talk later on about this big significant change when it comes to data and analytics by this new lab that they've opened up, this is the type of the stuff that the Rockies not only are so far behind in, but they're seeing the impacts of it. When other teams are willing to embrace and do these things, they're helping their players get better. Why do the Dodgers have such a strong, successful track record of rehabbing, rehabilitating, getting guys to just rebound on their career? Because they look at every last little detail. They invest in their players. And yes, they gave him the extension. And he's a starter and XYZ. They clearly support and believe in Ryan McMahon, but the Rockies haven't done enough to get the most out of their players, and they haven't done enough to help them prepare in the modern game of baseball. And hopefully, this new lab that they have is going to help players like Ryan McMahon, because the thing the Rockies can't afford to be is inconsistent. The division alone is too good now to allow the Rockies to be anything but inconsistent, or be anything but consistent, I should say. This team has to put it together, and they have to put it together against some of the best teams in baseball. 2024 is going to be a tough season, but it's going to be a season full of tests for the Rockies, and especially Ryan McMahon. They have to figure out ways to take steps forward and get better this year amidst a really difficult schedule, amidst a division that just got better, and amidst a lot of question marks about who's sticking around, what the future of this team looks like. There's reasons to be confident in this team, but the Ryan McMahon experience just encapsulates what the Rockies have been for 5 to 6 years. Inconsistent, not reaching their potential, and not doing everything possible to help put your team and your players in the best position to win. That's a massive problem with Ryan McMahon. He cannot finish the year batting under 200. He can't finish the year with nearly a 100-point drop across the line and a 48 drop or a 38 drop in RBI, a 12 drop in home runs. That's a massive problem. Mixed in with the fact that he struck out nearly 200 times. This is what's so frustrating about the whole Rockies experience and everything. And this offseason, we're having the same conversations about Ryan McMahon. We're having the same question mark issues about a lot of other players. And I'm not necessarily, and this is a team that we talked to Patrick Lyons. They're bringing everybody back. So the same philosophies are being applied what is going to change from the Rockies coaching staff, their mindset, their philosophy, their approach to help Ryan McMahon be the consistent, good third baseman that he is. Ryan McMahon should be batting 260 plus, and he should hit 20 home runs a year, and he should be flirting with 100 RBI. That's what the Rockies need him to be. And I believe he has the potential to do that. But is this team going to help him reach that potential? Is the coaching, is the approach, is the philosophy around Ryan McMahon right now helping him be the best version of himself? And I don't think so. I think we have still yet to see the best Ryan McMahon possible. The potential upside still for Ryan McMahon is great. I think Ryan McMahon has an argument to be made for someone that can be one of the better third basemen in the league. This is prime Ryan McMahon right now. He's 29 years old. He just turned 29 yesterday. This is the peak prime of his athleticism. And while he's had a solid career, The Rockies need to take someone like Ryan McMahon and get more of them, improve Ryan McMahon. And I'm not necessarily certain that they can. Maybe 260 is a little too aggressive for me. Maybe my expectations and hopes for Ryan McMahon are too high. But if Ryan McMahon is going to be the leader, if Ryan McMahon is going to be the person that we believe in, then we're going to have to see adjustments from not only the Rockies' way of how they're building up on Ryan McMahon, but also himself. How can he break out of these terrible slumps that he goes through so many times that completely derail his season? Statistically, it's really, really tough. But at the end of the day, I think the potential for Ryan McMahon is still there. This front office really believes in Ryan McMahon, and he's seen as a leader on the team. Let's go back to the piece here. McMahon has not pinpointed any physical issue. He said in the late season interview there were a few things. The field doesn't care. The game doesn't care. Instead, he focused on the younger players the Rockies expect him to lead. We have a lot of guys doing a lot of good things. This is encouraged as I've been, said McMahon. I'm pretty excited for the years to come. I just try to be here for them. They all have a pretty good idea of what they're doing. They're working hard with our coaches. We've seen Brenton Doyle look really good. Nolan Jones has done what Nolan has done. Everybody forgets Ezekiel Tovar is a rookie. Seems like he's been here for 20 years. All these young arms we brought up, there's a lot of potential. McMahon hears quite a bit about his potential for 30 homers and 100 RBI in a season. He has spent much of his career as a regular at 20 and 24 runs, or 20 to 24 home runs, and 86 is his RBI high in 2021. The Rockies want to see the incremental improvements that can limit the slumps. It's a team effort. And my confidence is fading in the Rockies' ability to get the most out of Ryan McMahon. But then the news broke that this team is changing their philosophy when it comes to analytics and how they're approaching the data side of the game and biometrics. And that leads me to be a little bit more encouraged. What am I talking about? Let's dive into that coming up in segment number 2. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot, hot, hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Maybe you believe big in them Broncos going up against the Lions this weekend. Maybe you want to bet on the rolling Avalanche or the Nuggets, who are coming back now after a little skid there. They've put a couple of games together. If your team wins, FanDuel is going to give you $150 in bonus bets. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for all the action this NFL season. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your streaming services of choice, your favorite streaming services maybe, and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel where you can be part of the show. We actually are going to dive into some comments from the YouTube section here in segment number 3. So shout outs to all of our everydayers out there. Shout outs to y'all for tuning in and finding the show. We really, really do appreciate it, and really do appreciate y'all tuning in here during the off season. And I know I'm sure you're sitting there, and especially after this week, as a Rockies fan, and you're just kind of wondering, what the heck is going on? How am I supposed to feel? The Dodgers are dodgering big time. They did that trade yesterday. Glasnow's coming over. Shohei deferred all his money. Decoy was his dog's name. I can't hate Shohei. Even if he's a Dodger, I'll never. I think he's great. I mean, my sister-in-law is a big Shohei fan, and I was telling her, I was like, no Dodger blue. My little nephew there, I was like, no Dodger uniform, no Dodger colors. We are not, even though we love Shohei, we're big Shohei fans. We cannot be allowing any Dodger blue to penetrate our family. So it's just a little off thing, but this is the type of stuff that you hear. Diamondbacks have made some trades. The Giants just landed another international free agent. They got that Korean baseball all-star MVP guy coming. And the Padres are a different story. But regardless, all the teams are getting better. All the teams have different approaches than the Rockies. All the teams have had different philosophies from the Rockies. And it starts with the Rockies' hesitation and complete neglect of the modern game of baseball and the modern way of doing analytics. We're going to read here from Joelle Milholm over on Purple Row talking about the Rockies actually going on and getting a new performance lab. Thomas Harding also reported this as well earlier. But when you read this piece, and I encourage you to read this piece because it highlights how far behind the Rockies have been for so long. And for those that know, that's not that groundbreaking of news. But when you're wondering why the Rockies can look so outmatched at sometimes, it's because of this right here. Other teams were looking at the best ways to get advantage from all their players in any moment that they could. Whereas the Rockies, it was loyalty from within. Got to bring it in. You were going to bring someone in from the outside. You're fired 6 months later because you don't believe in the Rocky way. That story, I think, is a bigger deal. And I'd love to learn more about that one because that's a massive problem. If you fire a person that you finally bring in from the outside in 6 months due to, quote, massive differences, then you're not embracing what that person from outside of the organization was bringing. You're not embracing change. You don't want to get better. Because the Rockies' way of doing things for 30 years has not been successful, has been a failure more than it has been a success. So to hear the Rockies are finally getting a lab, great news. But we are a decade behind, more so. Let's read here from Joelle Milholm here on Purple Row. In 2023, the Rays had the biggest research and development department with 44 employees. The Rockies' R&D has grown from its laughable staff of 1 in 2020 to 11 in 2023, which was still tied for the second lowest in MLB, according to Four Ring Sports Solution and the Denver Post. That's a joke. It's a straight up joke. That's a signal that the Rockies think that they know something that the other teams don't. They know. You want to know how the Rays got out of being a perennial basement team and have now been able to be in the playoffs, be in the mix, albeit with the early exits? More often than not, they were in the World Series not that long ago. It's because they embraced this. 44 on staff. That's 33 more than the Rockies have. That is triple the staff of looking, adjusting, and finding out the ways to get the best advantage, get the most out of your players. Instead, the Rockies crossed their arms and said, nah, we got it. We're on it. And what has it led to? High strikeouts, inconsistent play, never figuring out the enigma of Coors Field. Whereas the Rays have found playoff success, albeit it comes at the fact that your favorite players will only stay on that team for probably 2 to 3 seasons before being traded. But it's leading to success. And the Rockies probably don't have to do that. But it's time for them to start doing something different. And now this is coming for the Rockies. 8 years later, the Rockies have completed construction on a performance lab in Scottsdale, Arizona, that will allow them to capture and monitor biometrics data on all of its major and minor league players. The lab will be open in January. This is a big move for the Rockies to try to inch closer from the Luddite edge of analytics measuring stick to being more data-informed in player development. MLB.com's Thomas Harding wrote about the lab on December 10th and gave an example of how the type of data helped Elehuris Montero last season. Contracting the work out to a biometrics lab, the Rockies learned Montero had a problematic head movement and had issues early in his swing that were hindering his ability to recognize breaking balls and had his bat pulling out of the zone too quickly. The Rockies coaching staff was able to translate that into mechanical changes that made a noticeable difference. In 49 games before the adjustment, Montero hit 192, 220, 327 with 4 home runs. In the 36 games after, Montero hit 305, 371, 571 or 541 with 7 homers. That's everything you need to know right there, folks. Imagine if the Rockies didn't do that. Imagine if the Rockies continued to do what they've been doing this whole time and just trotting Montero out there or just benching him and stuff. That's a massive improvement. That's the Montero at the end of the year that saved his season. That's the Montero at the end of the season that sits there and makes you still believe that guy can drive in runs and hit for power for the Colorado Rockies. I don't know how you can sit there as the Rockies, and I know that's only one example, but when you see that, and when you see that level of improvement, that has to change your entire mindset, and I hope this lab does. I hope that this change and this embrace actually makes the Rockies really figure out and analyze and see what they have in their players. For them to be at the bottom of baseball and analytics is just an embarrassment. It's a joke, a straight up joke. They have a home field environment that needs they need to dive into every little piece of data information that they have so they can figure out the best way to maximize the damage at home. They need to look at the numbers. They need to look at the biometrics. They need to look at the swings. They need to look at the approaches of the players on the road to then be able to figure out what is the difference. What's the difference in the swings between home and away? What are the Rockies doing home versus away that causes such big splits? For too long, we've just thrown our hands up and said, altitude, 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 altitude. Instead of it just being altitude, it's ignorance. The Rockies have chosen to be willfully ignorant when it comes to the advanced analytics and biometrics of baseball, while the rest of the league is getting better and more advanced and deeper. The Rockies now getting this lab, that's great. But how far behind are they still? And how far behind is that lab still? Because here's the kicker. It's not staffed yet. Joelle Milholm. Now the questions arise, who will run the lab? Can the Rockies front office and coaching staff implement these changes? Could the data lead to changes in Coors Field pitching philosophies? In November, the Rockies posted a job opening for a coordinator of sports sciences to run the Scottsdale lab. And the recruitment, blah, 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 blah. So a little bit more. But basically, they're posting jobs outside of the organization, and we'll see if that happens. But while you think about that, keep this in mind. And this is for research and development here. The Rockies often hire from within, as evidenced by the current R&D department. When the Rockies last ventured into bringing in an outside perspective, it didn't go very well. In September of 2021, the Rockies hired Scott Van Lenten from the Washington Nationals to lead R&D. He was fired less than 6 months later in the middle of spring training due to major disagreements, according to Denver Post Patrick Saunders. Brian Jones, who's been with the Rockies since 2002, was promoted from video coordinator to director of research and development in 2022. Brittany Habe, the manager of research, is fairly new to the organization, especially in Rockies years. Habe has been with the Rockies since 2018, was the lone holdover in 2020 after the R&D mass exodus. Will the Rockies hire from within again? Are they capable of bringing in someone from outside the organization? Will Dick Monfort allow substantive changes if the data shows the need? That's the question. That's the most important question of this whole thing that Joelle asks. Will Dick Monfort embrace the change? God, this cold has just been kicking my butt this week. And just because they have this lab and just because of this doesn't mean that Dick Monfort's going to change his mind. That doesn't mean that Dick Monfort's going to change his philosophies. It doesn't mean any of this because he is nothing but loyal. And he's nothing but doing it my way, doing it Dick's way. So I'm encouraged by this lab. I'm encouraged by the Rockies investing more. I'm encouraged by the fact that hopefully they hire from outside of the organization to run this lab, to bring in some fresh eyes, bring in some fresh perspectives that this team desperately needs. But just like everything with the Rockies, all depends on Dick Monfort. And I have very little confidence that Dick Monfort's going to help his team embrace the new wave, embrace the future, embrace getting better, because he hasn't done so yet. He's more interested in using his money to invest in real estate and building around the Rockies facility than building up the actual Rockies. And that's the problem. I want to see people from outside the organization hired to come into this lab to help this baseball team, instead of it just being, let's pick another guy in from the system, pick up, hey, who's my best bud next? Let me go down my list here, Dick Monfort's best buddies list, and let's see who we can pick out to run this thing. This is a time for change. This is a moment where the Rockies can do something differently than they ever have before. Will they actually take advantage of it? We'll see. Let's get your YouTube comments here coming up in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show, just like all the folks that we're going to read comments from here coming up here in just a moment. But before we dive into everything, just want to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, let's finish out the week here with some YouTube comments. And let's start with Tom0000. Rockies need to first ditch their ugly uniforms. The Padres were a feeder team with consistent fire sales until they changed their uniform. Yankees and Dodgers both have white uniforms with single color lettering. Not a coincidence. I got nothing on that one. That's if you're going to say the Rockies have ugly uniforms compared to some of the other uniforms, and then you're just going to sit there and be like, yes, the simple elegance of a Dodgers uniform. It's just white with the blue lettering. That's boring. Give me the purple. Give me the fun. I think the purple and the uniform, and the Rockies do need another uniform outside of the City Connect. I will get you there. But I don't think the Yankees or the Dodgers, I know their legacy, but I'm not going to sit there and say, wow, they have the coolest uniforms. When in fact, they're just boring and plain, if you ask me. Skylar Christensen says 2024 might be a good year for the Rockies to experiment with some version of an opener pitcher to get hopefully through the order once, or at least Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, then swap in one of our long relief pitchers to get through the order 2 more times. I don't think they're going to do too many openers. They actually kind of had opener situations there at the end of last year with some, just with the depth issues. It could be interesting though. I'm definitely not opposed to creative approaches to handle the Dodgers. I mean, if it works against them, if they do end up trying that and they're able to find some success in it, could be interesting. But when you're doing those openers, you're just putting extra strain on the bullpen. And we saw what happened last year when you have to lean too much on that bullpen. Reminder, the Rockies bullpen before they were overworked was really good. And at moments tops in the game. That was obviously before the trades and stuff as well. But that's where I hesitate about something like the openers. I just don't think the Rockies have the pitching depth to do that yet. Rob V says, I believe the Rockies could actually be worse in 2024. This team has zero direction from top to bottom. A blind person can see this from a mile away, unfortunately. No moves to improve the roster has taken place, while AZ, LA, SF have taken steps to improve. I mean, I don't think that worse in record wise could happen due to schedule, but I think statistically the Rockies hopefully will be better. Overall, I think the performances of individual Rockies will be better. Overall, though, like with that schedule, with the NL West getting as good as it is, that's the question mark. That's part of the issues, and it's a key point to make. Again, what is the Rockies' response to the Dodgers having one of their biggest free agencies of all time, the Giants adding in one of the best international players available, and the Diamondbacks building off of their success? You have to respond to that in some ways. And you're right. The Rockies have made no changes, no additions, or anything of improvement that's going to help them keep pace with those teams. It's a good point. Wayno says the only thing they can get are more relievers because you don't want to shell out money and block what is supposed to be the future. Drew, Jordan, Fernandez, Veen, Amador, and Thompson. You I don't think will be worse, but still not good. That was in response to Rob there. And Lux Ace, my guy. Can't be you're gonna go watch Soto on the Yankees? Well, it'll be kind of fun. I can't blame you that too much. But here's Tracy here, what she says. Tracy635 says, until the Rockies take analytics seriously and join the rest of the baseball world, bump up their scouting and player development departments on par with the rest of baseball, the Rockies have no direction, and until they make notable changes, they will be a perennial last place team. The Bryant signing on paper may have looked good, but he hasn't earned his money as of yet, and no matter how talented he is, if he can't stay healthy, he's of no value to the Rockies. Well, you know, Tracy's got some. She likes to. She'll sting this team, and I'm here for it because hopefully this lab and everything are the steps in the right direction. But I think the Rockies need to do more than just this lab. They need to invest more in analytics, invest more in research, invest more in these type of things because that's going to be the stuff that helps you find the advantages of your environment. Taking that. They need to change their thought process. And they need to get it. And I will say this team has a little bit more of a direction than it has in the past. It's still murky, but they traded away a lot of those veterans. They've brought up some players. They've added a bunch of arms. So there are hints of direction, but overall, it is still frustrating times for the Rockies. Thank you all so much for your comments. You can keep firing off your Rockies hot takes in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Rockies. But folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Friday, December the 15th. We'll be back with more Rockies talk next week as we continue to see what's going on in the world of the hot stove and if the Rockies will do anything. But thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for tuning in. And for your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Or if you need more Colorado sports coverage, you can check out the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.